All right, we're moving on to our next theme, and this one is around employee experience and development. Feedback is, speaking of popular words, is a popular word these days and has been for quite some time now. For every process HR teams want to implement, it's recommended to ask employees and stakeholders for feedback where relevant. But in engagement surveys and performance reviews, we also ask for feedback, and even candidates are often invited to give feedback on their candidate experience during the recruitment process. And feedback can indeed be very useful and valuable for us in HR to improve processes and make the organization a better place to work. And for us as individual human beings, feedback is valuable to keep learning and growing. That is, however, if we are able to receive that feedback. And this is where the crux lies, because, well, many of us say that we love to receive feedback. How good are we actually at dealing with negative or less positive feedback? And that brings me to our second statement of the day. Asking people for feedback makes no sense if we don't teach them how to deal with it first. I'm going to start by asking Eric if this is a yes or a no for you.
Yeah, I would. In general, I think the answer would be yes.
All right.
I can do the but later on.
Nicholas.
Not born for the debate, but same here. I will say also yes with the but before, because it depends. But yes, in terms of that.
All right, Eric, I'm going to go back to you. Can you elaborate on this one?
Yeah, so I think, the assumption is that most people, know how to, the smart people, and they're not complete ignorant to receiving feedback, whether they, like it or are able to deal with it in a good way. That's a whole different matter. But where I do think it's very relevant is that if you want to have a constructive discussion or an exchange of opinions in relation to feedback, negative feedback in this instance, if you've set some parameters and expectations in advance, you will get a much better conversation about it. And maybe you can actually have some outcome that makes sense instead of that typical, the manager tells a subordinate something was not up to standard or her expectations or whatever. And the subordinate goes away with a, sure, I'll do better next time. But what does that mean? Did he or she really comprehend? Did she have an opinion that maybe could be contradictory to the manager? And another point, which I think is very interesting to always to remember, is that when you convey feedback, always, this is your opinion. It's your perception of what the person has done or has said. Who's to say you're right? It's just, how it goes through your head in your reflections and your biases and your, all these kind of things. So I think not only do we need to set expectations of what feedback is and how it should be treated, but, as people who give feedback, in particular negative feedback, which is the most difficult one, we have to be really observant about what we're actually feeding back, because it's, it's not given that your opinion is right, even though you are the manager, right?
All right, some very valid points there, I think, Eric. Nicholas, I'm going to you.
Yeah, a never-ending question, right? Feedback. And I agree with you. Everyone thinks it's important. I never heard anyone say, please don't give me feedback. It's not important for me. So you're right on that. But feedback for me, what I think I said yes to that question is that it's easy to give feedback. It's not hard. But the tough is send the feedback like a gift. So they actually open the bag and do something with it, right? That's the technology. That's the technique as a human being, EQ intelligence, how you do that. And for me, the technology, you have different ways on the empathy, how you can connect with empathy, how you can be on facts, and how you can be relatable. They can put that in a box and see, okay, and examples. And I'm from the world, and that's the way I would like to get it and also perceive it, is to give examples. Put myself in the person's position when I give the feedback, exemplify it on how I will do it, why I should do it, and see if that is applicable for them. but I need to give myself, okay, I find this same mistake, I solved it like this. This is how it got effect. Maybe it could work for you. I love to have feedback with examples. That is like a tool for them to really get it and do some practical with it. Best way to do it is for the negative part. For example, part in the positive way, you can give how many examples that you want, but you need to give an example in the negative part, would you also connect a bit with empathy, that you understand, okay, I might be the CEO. It's easy for me to say because I am not on the details. I heard a lot of that. Then give examples. Okay, but I haven't been CEO all the time. I've been in hundreds and thousands of mistakes. For God's sake, I'm aging 10 years. So this is what I learned. And take it or leave it. But I would like you to understand I've been there. And that is for me the most important way to be sure that the people actually get some value of the feedback, is to exemplify and be relatable with it.
Yeah, empathy is critical. I mean, empathy, and they've been a little bit sort of humble and say and show as a manager, if you dare to show some vulnerability, that guess what, we can all make mistakes, and if you can be honest about that and have a fruitful conversation when it is needed, you will get much better rapport and results from those conversations. But it's tricky sometimes, don't you think? I mean, in the sense that how does people perceive what you're saying back? Because if someone has done something, now coming back to this perception thing again, they've written something, said something, done something, whatever, and you give feedback on that. Okay, now the way that you give that feedback will be perceived by this person one way or the other, right? And I think the trick is to try and navigate and understand your people's. How do they react? What are their preferences? Are there any vulnerabilities in their, in their being, which you have to be a little bit careful about? For instance, some people will take critique better than others. As a manager, to know this is critical. It's and it's difficult always to remember, I think, but it's something that you should, always be aware of.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt here for a second there, right? Because obviously that's my role as well, because we are very much now in empathy and in giving examples and trying to consider how somebody might actually receive this feedback and their feelings. My question here is, aren't we going too far to that? Because until where it goes my responsibility as the person who gives the feedback to deliver it in a correct way and in a constructive way, but where starts the responsibility of the person who receives the feedback? Because as a manager, is it even feasible to demand of me that I know from every single person that one person prefers to get the feedback delivered in this way, the other person prefers that, the other one is actually has a bit of trouble getting negative feedback? Haven't we gone too far? Isn't there also a part of it that we are in the workplace, and as Neely, an employee, I need to be able to actually take negative feedback and deal with that? Yeah. Throwing this one in here, Nicholas.
Yeah, I can happily start. Exactly. That's what I wanted to follow up with. You're right. We have sometimes gone too far. Okay, maybe not too far. Let me change that. Yes, we can have these tools. That is something that you would like to get feedback and you think that's the best way. This is my way to give feedback on the best way to do it. This is how I learn. This is how I got the feedback that they liked my feedback, so to speak, and do something with it. But that's it. You can't cope with everyone. Someone is very sensitive. Someone is very logical. Some persons are working with numbers. 1 + 1 is 2. So I would like to have facts on my feedback, but I can't give you facts. I don't have the luxury. I give you my exemption, my experience in the feedback. You do whatever you want with it, but it's said. And I think that this is the truth. This is the way we do it, and we can learn from it. But we don't need to find the perfect way to do it. Empathy is important, but if the situation of the fact that empathy is not, it's facts they want. Okay. We can do it to the best way we can. Thereafter, you're right. We're in the workplace, and that is that's just the way it is.
And giving feedback in itself could become an all-day consuming task if we have to take into consideration every. I'm pushing this a little bit, right? But I mean, you get my point, Eric. I would like to hear your thoughts.
First of all, I don't think it's a problem that it's a never-ending task, because if you're a manager, this is a key part of your day, and people that you work with are always asking kind of for your opinion, and they, many people would like to know if they've done, things correctly, and I think, it's the workplace, and I think there's a lot of common sense in this. And I do think empathy is still important. I also think that to a point, what you need to be aware of is the extreme cases, that there might be some with certain specific things that you should be careful about. But as you can, I'm sure you can agree with Nicholas, if you can adapt it to the analyst versus the driver, or the person who is totally avoiding any conflict, to the those kind of personalities. If you can think about how you present things, you will probably reach them better. But again, it's a busy day. You have 1,000 other things to do. But I do think that giving feedback, whether it's negative or positive, it's such a important part of a manager's day that it just has to become second nature. And what I think what we definitely need to avoid maybe is this attitude of, I'm just going to say whatever I think, and you're going to have to take it however you like. Because I'm not really sure that creates a good rapport between manager and employee, even in a busy day, although it's difficult. So you have to prioritize perhaps who you really focus on.
No, and I agree and that's the tool. That's the way that, like, driving IT people, working with other type of services, structuring code, more logical, going commercial people, customer success people, and so there are different type. If I put people on folders here now, I understand, but you understand what I'm getting here. If I don't manage in my feedback, because you have in the decisions you take, you need to argue for the decision, get feedback for it, you won't be good as a leader. Then you are a manager just to scoping, but a leader for them to understand, to follow, to understand their values, to get better on the work and better as a person, better on presentation, everything like that. That's the tool. But in certain end, they have their own responsibility as well. That's what I mean. To take it and do something with it. Regardless of their characteristics, you are also a part of it in the feedback loop, so to speak. That is something I can also relate to.
And on that note, perhaps a last question here for both of you before we move on to the final part of the episode. I have the impression that the focus has very much been so far, and still is in a lot of cases, on how to give the feedback and how to take into consideration as many people as possible to be able to give that feedback as well as possible. Shouldn't the focus shift perhaps a little bit more to teaching people, also going back to the statement, to teaching people how to receive the feedback, and also to teach them about their own responsibility in that, in how they receive the feedback? Eric, so your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you can establish kind of a common ground of why you're doing feedback, good and bad, positive and negative. If you as a manager are as good at telling people that was a really good presentation, and then, as an example, and then say why it was very good, then you could also be much easier to have a difficult conversation that, the customer meeting we had was not very good because of X, Y, and Z. So the learning perhaps becomes in when you talk about not just the negative feedback, but also the positive feedback, and it becomes a kind of a second nature in the business. I'm not sure if you have as part of training, this is how we do feedback in the business. Not sure. It would be even better if it could become a kind of a standard as is practiced by management first and foremost, and then taught this way to the rest of the organization. Because, feedback shouldn't also just be between manager and a subordinate. It could be between colleagues as well. So, how to treat each other, and how do we talk and speak? And, that's the cultural thing as well. How do we behave around here?
Yeah.
So, that's my position on that.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Well, the question in terms of teaching, I mean, Eric said it very good. You know what, Justin needs to know? You know there are many HR tools solving this issue?
See? Yeah. What's it called?
I'm going to mention just a local one in Sweden, just to handle the best way to get out ROI from your feedback and culture and all of that, right? But you're right. I mean, you have to reach common ground. I think it's a culture. This is culture. This is a part of the employer branding, internal employer branding. That is what it is. Yeah. It is a way. We are open to do feedback, both negative and positive, but we need to connect it like this. This is the way how we talk to each other, with respect to each other. We respect each other. We can have laughter together. We can have fun at work, which is the most important part, according to me, in life. But not on the expense of not being able to receive feedback because of X and Y. So I think it's a culture part here. And it starts from the top to the bottom to show this.
Absolutely.
I can't sit here and say that and also everyone says that they are good on getting feedbacks, but they're not all of them. So, depending on how sensitive you are, depending on the topic. So for me, start with the culture. Implement it in your culture. Say, in terms of feedback, this is how we work. And sometimes use these tools. You have tools in HR solutions for feedback, to also recognize positive feedback. I recognize you for the great work in this project. I would love to give you great feedback on the great. This could be digitalized. And no, that's my part. I will say it's a culture part. It's internal employee branding. Start from the top of the button. Show the way that you are open to positive and negative feedback and give examples of it.
And maybe go out and ask people for the feedback on you.
100%.
Not just, send off a survey, digital thing, but, actually going out and say, what do you think about this? And invite people, because then they will see how you take the feedback, and then you set the ground rules, right?
Yes, or not, but
or
yes.
Not. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.